What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here today to talk about my biggest loss of the year. It's kind of going to be a 2-for-1. We're going to talk about two separate cards because they are both the same player. Spoilers, you could probably guess who it is if anyone's been watching the channel for a while. It's not going to be too tricky to figure out. The question is do you know the card? Can you guess the card that was my biggest loss this year? Think about it for a minute. And it is not one of the ones on the screen. But we're lead off by talking about the one from last year. Last year, my biggest loss of the season, or the year rather, was the Luca Select Premier PSA 10. I bought that card on April 18th, 2021 for $1,200. Let that sink in a little bit. I sold it last October for $450. Some people in the comment section on that video, you can go back and look, were like, oh, yeah, for sure, good move. Some people were like, no, man, it's going to bounce back. You should have held. You should make a mistake, or you made a mistake. What is this card selling for right now, you ask? $212 is the current market value of the Luca Select Premier PSA 10. So by selling last year and eating an $800 loss, I saved myself $200 by not writing it out. That is the key thing to remember. Sometimes it is okay to take a loss on a card. Sometimes it'll come back and bite you in the ass. More often than not, it'll work out for you. But that was last year's. Let's talk about this year's. The player is on the screen. One Mr. Baker Mayfield. And it is not the Optic Hollow PSA 10, but we could talk about that card. That was the last Baker card that I held the longest. I got rid of everything else. The last big card, I got rid of at the National. Everything else I sold throughout the summer. Obviously, Browns fan, went heavy bags with Baker Mayfield, the previous National in Chicago. I purchased this card, I believe it was on eBay, $610 back in July 2021. I sold it in October for $50, a $560 loss. That was not my biggest loss of the year. The card is down 92%. Currently, last one to sale, it was prior to his Rams comeback win the other day. Went for like $35. So I said I would carry one. This was one of my favorites of the more reasonably priced stuff. I said I was going to carry one in the season just to kind of see what happened. Like, just in case he had one last ride with Carolina. Obviously, that was a disaster and did not work out. To be fair, I could have sold that card before the season started for like $100. So I only lost an extra 50 rolling the dice into season, but I figured it was worth the gamble. If you haven't guessed by now, put it in the comments down below. The card I lost the most on was the Baker Mayfield Flawless RPA. I purchased that card at the previous National in Chicago in 2021 for over $2,000. I paid well over $2,000 for that card. It wasn't $3,000. It was mid twos. I paid for that card cash, no trade. Very excited about it. Love that card. It was one of my favorite cards in the collection when Baker was on the Browns. Obviously, we all know how that following season went and how things went afterwards. I held the card throughout the summer just to kind of see what would happen to it. I was waiting to see where Baker would end up and then get a little bit of a price bump. Baker ends up signing in Carolina, or traded to Carolina, rather. I put the card on eBay. It sells. $1,200, I think it was, after eBay fees, or around $1,200, $1,200. I ship it out. I screw up the shipping. I shipped two cards the same day. I did a video on this. You may or may not remember it. I sent the Baker Mayfield to like Texas or something, and that guy's card to the guy in Carolina. Got them to ship the cards back to me, shipped the correct card off to the guy in Texas. The guy on eBay, because I don't blame him, he requested a refund, and then he said he would rebuy the card once I got it back in hand. I got it back in hand, and he ghosted me, changed his mind. So I lost out on that $1,200 sale. I said, all right. I took that card to the National. I said, my sole goal of the National, or I shouldn't say my sole goal, my main goal of the National was not to leave that building with that card. I kept it on me for like the first couple days, and I believe it was Saturday. I think it was Saturday. It might have been Friday. I have to go back and double check the videos. I had no interest on it on trade nights or anything like that. And I said, okay, it's time to get this thing to happen. I shop it around to a ton of different dealers, basically saying, are you looking to buy, looking to trade? I would have literally traded that thing for basically anything. I showed it to Roth and his crew, Roth Cards and crew. They made me an offer. It was like $700, I think, or something like that. So I had that in my back pocket as a worst case scenario. I would take the $700. I would rather have the $700 cash than the Baker. Walked it around. Walked up to a table. Guy had a Jim Brown SGC3 in his case. I said, would you be interested in trading for this? And I put the Baker Flawless on the table. It was his son and his father. The son was probably in his teens, maybe 16, 17, 18. I'm bad at judging kids' ages. Kid was very interested in it. The father was like, what the hell do you want a Baker Mayfield card for? Like, this is basically like this mistake. I said, he had 1,600 on the SGC3 Jim Brown, which is exactly what they were going for at the time. His price was pretty much right at where it was supposed to be. I said, all right. I said, if I give you the Baker, what do you want in cash? And he ended up valuing the Baker at $1,000 trade value. So I'd have to kick in $600 cash to get the Jim Brown. I didn't hesitate. I snap called. I think I hesitated for like theatric purposes. I was debating going back and forth, but the dad was really not into this deal. It was his kids' cards. He was letting them kind of do whatever he wanted to do with them. So I didn't hesitate too long because I didn't want to lose out on it. So I said, all right, I just kind of called and was like, all right, let's just do it, through the cash down on the table to kind of seal it. Put the $600, I had it in my pocket ready to go. Counted out the $100 bills, laid them on the table to make it feel real, make sure he wasn't going to back out, and we accepted. Now, that card has come down in value as well. That $1,600 Jim Brown is now down to about probably $950 to $1,100. They really jump around depending on how good or bad they look. The centering is not great on mine, but the color and the corners and everything looks fantastic. Edges, all that looks good. Just the centering's bad. But regardless, so in hindsight, maybe I would have been better off just taking the $700 cash. I don't know that I would have bought the Jim Brown anyway. I'd already had a Jim Brown at this point. This was my second one. But that card I know will be good trade bait going forward. Yes, it's come down a little bit. But that was my worst loss by far. That card, I lost probably $1,400 on that card, not counting the $600 I threw into it to make that deal happen. Obviously, I probably didn't need to do that, but that was, like I said, I shopped that card everywhere on that show floor. No one wanted to touch it. And I don't blame them. So the fact that I found someone interested in it, I had to pay the $600 tax essentially to get rid of that card. But I got a Jim Brown SGC3 back. Once again, that's come down in value, but most things have. I feel pretty good about carrying that card around in my case. Other than the Baker Mayfield, I feel like even though I had to kick cash in, I won that trade by a mile. I don't know what that Baker Flawless is worth now. To be fair, I don't know that he kept it. They immediately put it in their case. Maybe that card sold by the end of the show. I doubt it personally, but you never know. I was crazy enough to buy it at one point in time, so there might be some other crazy person out there. So between that card and the Optic Hollow, I basically lost $2K on Baker. Most of the other stuff I got rid of way sooner. I took losses on that stuff as well, but nowhere near to the level of these two particular cards. Obviously, I've taken other losses this year for sure, but these two were by far the biggest ones. By far the biggest ones. Like I said, that's almost $2,000 probably. Actually, probably very close to $2,000 combined between just those two cards. So that was my worst loss of the year. Curious And I probably have worse losses on paper. Maybe like my Hulk 181 has come down quite a bit in value. If I went to sell that today, I don't count those unless I actually sold whatever the item is. Then I count it for the purposes of this video. So I'm curious down below. Please let me know in the comments, what was your worst loss of the year? What was the one thing that you sold this year that you just took a beating on it and just said, nope, we're done here. I just want this thing out of my collection, and moved it and took the loss and moved on. And that's a good thing. Like I said, I am all about don't be afraid to take the loss. I've done videos about that in the past. Don't be scared to take the loss. I think it's the number one mistake people make in the collectible space, whether it's cards, comics, whatever. They are too scared to take a loss. Sometimes taking the loss is the right play. Look at the Select Premier. I took an $800 bath on that card. I saved myself $200. If I kept the Baker Flawless into the season instead of getting $1,000 trade value out of it, what do you think that card, prior to this Rams thing, who the hell knows what's going to happen there? But what do you think the value of that card is today? A few $100, maybe 500 if you're lucky. That's all I got for you guys and girls. Don't be scared of the loss. It's okay to have red on the spreadsheet sometimes. It is what it is. We get some stuff wrong. We get some stuff right. You just got to be a little bit more right than you are wrong and avoid the big ones. Obviously, that was a big one. That's all I got for you guys and girls. Catch you on the next one. Peace.